The Arctic air had a bite that went straight to the bone, a cold so pure and thin it felt like breathing glass. Inside the geodesic domes of Arctic listening post-icebreaker, the air was recycled, sterile, and thick with a tension that had nothing to do with the temperature. Anya Sharma, civilian communications technician, preferred the cold. It was honest. She ran a diagnostic on the primary satellite array, her fingers moving across the holographic interface with a quiet efficiency that went largely unnoticed. That was the point. For the last 2 years, her entire existence had been engineered around being unnoticed. She was just another contractor fulfilling a 2-year rotation at the top of the world, a ghost in a parka who kept the station's ears open to the silent chatter of the high latitudes. The base commander, Colonel Madsen, strode through the command center with the heavy-footed certainty of a man who believed the world bent to his will. His jaw was perpetually tight, his eyes constantly scanning for infractions, for any sign of weakness that might tarnish his perfect record. He saw Icebreaker not as a scientific outpost, but as a military fortress, a bulwark against threats no one else saw coming. He saw his people as cogs in that fortress, and Anya, with her quiet demeanor and civilian status, was the smallest cog of all. He passed her station without a glance, his voice booming as he addressed his executive officer. "I want readiness drills doubled. This storm front is giving me a bad feeling. Complacency is the enemy up here." Anya's eyes didn't lift from her console, but she heard him. She heard everything. Complacency wasn't the enemy. The enemy was what you never saw coming, what hid in plain sight. She finished the diagnostic, all systems green, just as they had been every day for the last 730 days. But a flicker in her peripheral vision caught her attention. A microsecond of data lag in the encrypted uplink, a packet loss so small the system's own AI auto-corrected it without a flag. It was nothing. A cosmic ray, a solar flare echo, a simple digital hiccup in the most advanced listening post on the planet. But it wasn't nothing. Her gut, an old and unwelcome friend, tightened. She had felt this before, this subtle wrongness, this whisper in the machine that preceded the scream. She discreetly opened a subsurface diagnostic panel, one that wasn't on the standard tech manifest. Her clearance was for Level 3 maintenance. This was Level 7 analysis. If Madsen saw, he'd have her on the first transport plane back to the mainland. Her contract terminated for overstepping. Her fingers typed a short string of code, a ghost key from another life. The system responded, showing her the raw data stream. There was again. A packet dropped, then another. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic, a digital heartbeat where there should be a steady flow. Someone was probing the system. Gently, patiently, looking for a keyhole. She closed the panel, her face a mask of calm. Around her, the command center hummed with its usual activity. Marines in Arctic gear ran systems checks. Meteorologists argued about barometric pressure, and Colonel Madsen barked orders. No one else saw the shadow creeping into their fortress. Anya stood and stretched, making a show of being tired. She walked toward the mess hall, her movements casual. But her mind was racing, calculating. Who had this level of access? And why were they knocking so quietly on the door to the world's most secret ear? She thought of the promise she had made to herself when she took this job, when she buried her old name and her old life under a mountain of ice and snow. No more. No more shadows. No more games. But as the cold air hit her face when she stepped into the connecting tunnel, she knew. The game had found her. The past was a patient hunter, and up here at the edge of the world, there was nowhere left to run. Her time as a ghost was over. The silence that followed the initial system probe was more unnerving than the anomaly itself. For 3 days, Anya watched the data streams with a hawk's intensity, running deep-level diagnostics disguised as routine maintenance. Nothing. The rhythmic packet loss had vanished. The system reported perfect operational integrity. The other technicians saw her diligence as a sign of a contractor trying to impress, perhaps angling for a bonus. They joked about her paranoia in the mess hall. "Sharma thinks the Russians are trying to hack the coffee machine again." One of them had laughed. She let them. Their ignorance was a form of camouflage. Colonel Madsen, for his part, had forgotten her existence, his focus consumed by the approaching polar vortex and the readiness of his Marines. He trusted his systems. The multi-billion-dollar network of sensors, relays, and firewalls that made Icebreaker the most secure facility in the Northern Hemisphere was, in his mind, infallible. His job was to protect it from physical threats, not digital ghosts. On the fourth day, the storm hit. Winds howled outside the domes, shaking the structures with a low, mournful groan. Snow fell in a blinding sheet, reducing visibility to zero. The base was completely cut off, a tiny island of warmth and light in a sea of white fury. It was then that the real attack began. It started not with a bang, but with a flicker. The lights in the command center dipped for a second, then returned to full strength. The main status board flashed red across a dozen sectors before resetting to green. An automated voice announced, "Power surge detected. Rerouting to auxiliary generators. All systems nominal." Madsen grunted, annoyed by the interruption. "Get a tech team on that generator. I want to report in 5. But Anya knew it wasn't a power surge. She was already at her console, her hands a blur. She bypassed the primary interface, diving directly into the core command logs. Her screen filled with lines of cascading code, a waterfall of digital chaos. The surge was a smokescreen, a diversion designed to draw attention while the real payload was delivered. A logic bomb, a sophisticated, military-grade virus had been triggered, and it wasn't just targeting the comms array. It was targeting everything. "Colonel," she said, her voice cutting through the command center's low hum. She stood, turning to face him. Her usual quiet demeanor was gone, replaced by an unnerving stillness. "We have a critical security breach. We are not experiencing a power surge. We are under attack." Madsen turned, his face darkening with irritation. "Technician Sharma, I believe I gave an order to the engineering team. Return to your station." "Sir, this isn't a hardware failure," she insisted, stepping towards him. "The entire system has been compromised by a logic bomb. It's rewriting the core protocols. In approximately 10 minutes, we will lose primary life support, navigation, and all external communications. We will be completely blind and in the dark." A few of the nearby officers stopped their work, their eyes darting between the stone-faced colonel and the surprisingly forceful technician. Madsen's jaw clenched. "You are a civilian contractor, Sharma. You are not cleared to make that kind of assessment. You will stand down, or I will have you escorted to your quarters." "There won't be any quarters to escort me to, sir," Anya replied, her voice dropping, icy and calm. "The virus is also targeting the heating regulators. Without them, the ambient temperature inside this facility will drop to 50 below in under an hour. We'll freeze to death before the storm even breaks." The colonel took a step towards her, his sheer physical presence meant to intimidate. "I have had enough of your insubordination." But before he could finish, the main screen behind him went black. Then, a single line of text appeared, written in stark, green letters. "Aegis protocol disabled. Greetings from Tartarus." A cold dread washed over the room. Aegis was the station's last line of defense, an automated system of perimeter turrets and electronic countermeasures. Tartarus, that was a name no one recognized. A name from the abyss. Madsen stared at the screen, his confidence finally cracking. He turned to his chief security officer. "Get our defense grid back online. Now." The officer frantically typed at his console. "I can't, sir. I'm locked out. All manual overrides are failing." The lights flickered again, this time staying dimmer. A low alarm began to chime, a slow, rhythmic beat that sounded like a funeral dirge. The automated voice returned, colder this time. "Warning. Primary communications, array offline. Warning. Life support systems failing." Anya looked at Madsen, her eyes holding his. There was no "I told you so" in her gaze. There was only the grim reality of their situation. "Your protocols have failed, Colonel. We're now officially on our own." The room was silent, save for the chilling, steady beat of the alarm. The great fortress of Icebreaker had been blinded and crippled from within, and the real enemy, The one lurking outside in the storm had not yet shown its face. The command center felt like a tomb. The rhythmic chime of the failure alarm was the only sound, a steady countdown to the inevitable. The faces of Madsen's elite Marines were etched with a mixture of disbelief and growing fear. They were warriors trained to fight men, not ghosts in their own machines. They looked to their colonel for answers, for orders, for the certainty he had always projected. But for the first time, Madsen was silent. He stood staring at the black screen, at the mocking green text from Tartarus, his authority stripped away not by a superior officer, but by a line of code. His fortress had crumbled from the inside out. "Give me a hard line to the generator room," he finally barked, his voice straining to reclaim its usual command. "I want a manual system reboot, sector by sector." The engineering chief shook his head, his face pale. "We can't, sir. The virus has locked the physical relays. Trying to force a reboot could trip the primary breakers. We'd lose all power, including emergency life support." Madsen slammed his fist on a console. The metallic clang echoed in the tense silence. "Then what are you telling me, Chief? That we sit here and wait to freeze?" It was Anya who answered. She had moved to the central holographic map table, her hands already working, pulling up deep-level schematics of the station's network architecture. The other technicians watched her, their earlier mockery forgotten, replaced by a grudging curiosity. She moved with a purpose they didn't understand, accessing systems they didn't know existed. "The virus is a parasite, Colonel," she said, not looking up. "It's designed to use our own standard protocols against us. Every reboot command you issue will only feed it, allowing it to dig deeper into the subsystems. It's not just shutting us down, it's learning our defenses." "And what would you suggest, technician?" Madsen shot back, sarcasm dripping from his words. "Since you seem to have all the answers." Anya finally looked up from the glowing map. "I suggest you stop thinking like a soldier and start thinking like the people who built this weapon." She pointed to a schematic of the station's core server hub. "They didn't build a wall to be climbed. They built a maze with a kill switch at the center. The virus is designed to keep us running in circles in that maze. We don't try to fight it. We go straight for the switch." One of Madsen's lieutenants, a young, eager officer named Rourke, stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, what she's describing is a complete manual purge of the core. It would mean bypassing every security failsafe. We don't have that level of clearance. No one on this base does." "I do," Anya said simply. The statement landed with the force of a physical blow. The command center went utterly still. Madsen turned to her slowly, his eyes narrowing into slits. "Explain yourself, technician. And this time, I want the truth. Who are you?" Before Anya could answer, a new alarm blared, this one high-pitched and urgent. The short-range proximity sensors, the last system still partially active, began flashing with red icons. "Sir," the sensor operator shouted, his voice cracking. "Multiple ground contacts approaching from the north. Unidentified vehicles, moving fast through the storm." Madsen's head snapped toward the screen. Through the swirling snow of the external camera feeds, they could just make out dark shapes, low-slung snowmobiles and larger tracked vehicles, emerging from the blizzard. They weren't rescue. They were an invasion force. "Aegis is still down," Rourke yelled. "They'll be at the main gate in less than 20 minutes." Madsen's military mind took over, the digital threat momentarily forgotten in the face of the physical one. "Lock down the command center. I want all fire teams at their defensive positions. Seal the perimeter." His men scrambled to obey, grabbing rifles from the armory lockers, their faces grim. They had a fighting chance on the ground, but they were outnumbered, and their enemy had the ultimate advantage, the element of surprise and a fortress whose defenses they had already dismantled. In the midst of the chaos, Anya remained at the map table. The approaching vehicles confirmed her theory. The virus wasn't the attack. It was the key. It was meant to open the door for the force now bearing down on them. She looked at Madsen, who was now barking orders into a handheld radio, trying to coordinate a defense with no sensors and no automated support. He was a good soldier, a capable commander, but he was fighting a war he didn't understand. "Colonel," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "Your men on the wall can't hold them for long without support. You have one chance to give them that support. Let me get to the core." Madsen stared at her, his face a mask of conflict. To trust her was to admit his own system, his own command had failed. It was to bet the lives of every person on the base on the word of a civilian technician he didn't know, who spoke of clearances she shouldn't have. "Who are you?" he demanded again, his voice low and dangerous. Anya met his gaze. The sounds of rifle fire began to echo faintly from outside. "I'm the person who can activate the kill switch," she said. "But you have to let me go. Now." The first explosion rocked the foundation of the dome. A geyser of snow and twisted metal erupted near the western perimeter wall where a Marine fire team had been positioned. The command center shuddered, and the lights flickered violently, casting the room in strobing flashes of emergency red. The battle for Icebreaker had begun. "RPG." A voice screamed over the radio, followed by a burst of static. "They've breached the outer fence. We're falling back to the airlock." Colonel Madsen's face was a grim mask of fury and determination. He was in his element now, a commander in a siege, shouting orders, moving tactical markers on a map that was now terrifyingly blind. He was trying to fight a conventional battle against an enemy who had already won the unconventional war. Anya watched him for a beat, her heart pounding not with fear, but with a cold, familiar urgency. She had seen men like Madsen before, brave, honorable, and utterly out of their depth when the rules of engagement were rewritten. He was playing checkers while his opponent was playing three-dimensional chess. "Rourke," she said to the young lieutenant, who was trying to get a visual from the last remaining camera feed. "I need an access conduit to the server core. Now, where is the nearest hardline terminal?" Rourke looked from her to the colonel, torn. I can't, ma'am." The colonel's orders are getting his men killed." Anya snapped, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper that cut through the noise. "Look at the board. They aren't attacking our strong points. They're targeting the infrastructure nodes, the generator housing, the backup comms tower. They aren't trying to conquer this base. They're trying to erase it. They know exactly where to hit us." Rourke stared at his screen, at the blinking red icons indicating structural damage, and his eyes widened. She was right. The attacks were surgical, aimed not at the soldiers, but at the station's heart. He made a decision. "This way," he said, grabbing a key card from his belt. "But if the colonel finds out, he'll have bigger problems to deal with." Anya finished, already following him through a side door and into a narrow, humming service corridor. The air here was cold, filled with the hum of processors and cooling fans. This was the station's nervous system. They moved quickly, the sounds of battle growing more muffled behind them. Anya's mind was a whirlwind of calculations. The Tartarus virus wasn't just a logic bomb, it was a map. It had fed the station's weak points directly to the attacking force. Whoever they were, they had an insider's knowledge. "It's here," Rourke said, stopping at a small, unmarked steel door. "Manual access to the primary core. It's triple encrypted. Only the base commander and CENTCOM have the keys." Anya knelt and ran her hand over the keypad. She ignored it, instead pulling a small, flat device from the heel of her boot. It looked like a featureless piece of black plastic. She pressed it against the door's electronic lock. There was a faint click. "What's that?" Rourke asked, astonished. "Something that's not on your inventory," she replied, pushing the heavy door open. The server core was a cavernous, circular room, bathed in the cool blue light of thousands of blinking LEDs. In the center stood the main processing unit, a monolith of humming machinery. This was the brain of Icebreaker, and it was dying. Anya ran to the main console, her fingers flying across the keyboard, typing in command strings that made Rourke's head spin. She wasn't rebooting. She was performing open-heart surgery on the system. "I'm in," she murmured, "but the virus has rooted itself in the boot sector. I can't purge it from here. I have to trigger a full system quarantine. It will shut down everything for 60 seconds. Everything, including life support." Rourke whispered, his voice tight. "Including life support," she confirmed without looking up. It's the only way to starve the virus of power. When the system reboots, it will come up in a clean state from the ROM. Back in the command center, the situation was deteriorating. They've breached airlock 3, a soldier yelled. We're being overrun. Madsen grabbed a rifle, his face set. All personnel, fall back to the command center. We make our last stand here. He was preparing to die for his fortress. Just as he gave the order, a new voice cut through the comms. It was Anya's. Colonel, stand down your men. Madsen froze, his hand on the radio. Sharma, what have you done? I gave you a direct order, and I'm giving you one now. Her voice came back, cold and authoritative, utterly transformed. In 60 seconds, I am initiating a full system blackout. All power on this base will be cut. Tell your men to find cover and brace. You don't have that authority, he roared. According to Subprotocol 7 of the Specter program, I have ultimate authority in a zero-day event, she replied. The term Specter program hung in the air. Madsen's face went white. It was a ghost file, a myth, a black ops program so secret that its existence was officially denied. Who are you? He stammered. Get your men to cover, Colonel, was her only reply. Blackout in 30 seconds. The line went dead, leaving Madsen standing in the middle of his chaotic command center, rifle in hand, his entire world tilting on its axis. He had just been given an order by a civilian technician, an order that spoke of ghost programs and a level of power he couldn't comprehend. The countdown had begun, and he was no longer in command. The 60 seconds of absolute darkness and silence were the longest of Anya Sharma's life. In the server core, the only light came from the faint emergency glow of her handheld device. The roar of the battle outside, the hum of the servers, the frantic shouts over the radio, all of it had vanished, replaced by a profound, suffocating stillness. The station was dead. It was a terrifying gamble. In that minute, Icebreaker was completely vulnerable. If the purge failed, the system would not come back online, and they would be left powerless, waiting for the enemy to walk through their doors. Lieutenant Rourke stood frozen a few feet away, his breathing loud in the silence. Anya didn't move. She watched the timer on her device count down, her face illuminated in its cold, blue light. Her expression was calm, her focus absolute. This was her world. This was the razor's edge where she had always lived. 3, 2, 1. The lights flickered, then blazed alive. The server's whirred, spinning up with a deafening roar. The core was rebooting. On the main console, the screen flashed green. System purge complete. Rebooting from secure ROM. Aegis protocol reactivating. Anya let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. We're back, she said softly. Back in the command center. The lights came on to a scene of stunned confusion. Colonel Madsen stood frozen, his rifle half raised. His men were crouched behind consoles, bracing for an assault that had suddenly gone silent. The main status board lit up, sector by sector, all green. The automated voice returned, crisp and clear. Aegis defense system online. All turrets active. Outside, the change was instantaneous and brutal. The station's perimeter turrets, now free of the virus, swiveled to life. They acquired targets with deadly efficiency. Streams of tracer fire cut through the blizzard, tearing into the enemy vehicles. Explosions lit up the white landscape as the automated cannons ripped the invading force apart. The soldiers who had been pinned down moments before now watched in stunned silence as their fortress defended itself with a ferocity they had never seen. The attack faltered, then broke. The remaining vehicles turned and fled back into the storm. The battle was over in less than a minute. In the command center, a wave of relieved cheers erupted. Marines clapped each other on the back, their faces streaked with grime and sweat, but grinning. They had survived. They had won. But Madsen wasn't cheering. He was staring at the comms unit, his mind still reeling from Anya's last transmission. The Specter program. It was impossible. A black book operation from the height of the Cold War, tasked with creating and neutralizing digital and psychological weapons. It was officially disbanded, its operatives listed as casualties of training accidents or simply vanished from the records. He walked slowly to the central map table, where the holographic display now showed a secure perimeter. The green text from Tartarus was gone. He turned to his executive officer. "Find her," he said, his voice quiet. "Find Technician Sharma. Bring her to me. Now." Lieutenant Rourke escorted Anya back from the server core. As she stepped into the command center, the cheering stopped. Every eye turned to her. The soldiers, the officers, the technicians, they all stared at the quiet civilian woman who had single-handedly saved them. She looked the same: parka, worn boots, tired eyes, but they saw her differently now. She wasn't one of them, but she had fought for them with a weapon none of them understood. She walked directly to Madsen, ignoring the stares. She didn't wait for him to speak. "The threat is neutralized for now," she said, her tone professional. "But they know about this facility. They know its weaknesses. They will be back." Madsen looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time. He didn't see a technician. He saw a soldier, a commander, a ghost from a war he never knew was being fought. The arrogance was gone from his face, replaced by a deep, unsettling uncertainty. His entire career had been built on a foundation of rules, of chain of command, of knowing his place and the place of everyone under him. She had shattered that foundation. He finally found his voice, and when he spoke, it was low, stripped of its usual bluster. "I was given an order. By you. An order that invoked a program that doesn't exist." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that only she could hear. "I have a right to know who is operating within my command. I need a name, technician. Not the one on your file. The real one. Who the hell are you?" The command center was a strange mix of relief and confusion. The immediate threat was gone, but a new, more unsettling mystery had taken its place, centered on the quiet technician who stood before their commander. Anya met Colonel Madsen's intense gaze without flinching. The noise of the room seemed to fade away, the celebrating Marines, the beeping consoles, all of it receding until it was just the two of them, a silent standoff in the heart of the reclaimed fortress. He had asked for her name, the real one. She owed him that. The lives of everyone on this base had been in her hands, and she had acted with an authority he was still struggling to comprehend. "My designation," she began, her voice steady and low, "was a call sign. It was the only name we used." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle, letting him understand that what he was about to hear was not just a name, but a key to a locked room in the darkest basement of national security. She held his gaze. Specter 1. The name was a whisper, but it hit Colonel Madsen like a physical blow. He actually took a step back, his face draining of all color. His knuckles, gripping the edge of the console, turned white. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Specter 1. It wasn't just a name from a ghost file. It was the designation for the program's lead operative, the first of the Specters, the one who was rumored to have built the very protocol she had just used to save them. She was a myth, a legend whispered about in the highest echelons of intelligence circles, a ghost who was supposed to be long dead. The command center staff watched the exchange in silence. They couldn't hear the words, but they saw the effect on their commander. They saw the unshakable Colonel Madsen, a man who had faced down threats without a flicker of fear, suddenly look like he had seen an apparition. He finally found his voice, and it was a choked, disbelieving rasp. "That's not possible. The program was decommissioned. All operatives were accounted for." "Accounted for doesn't mean dead, Colonel," Anya said softly. "It means the records were closed. I was given a choice: disappear and live in silence, or have my existence officially erased. I chose silence." Madsen stared at her, his mind trying to reconcile the woman in front of him, the quiet tech who fixed their comms, with the legend of Specter 1, a master of digital warfare. "Why here?" he finally managed to ask. "Of all the places to disappear, why a listening post at the top of the world?" "Because this is one of the places I helped design," she said. "I knew its secrets. I knew its vulnerabilities. I thought if I watched over it, I could ensure the weapons I helped create would never be used." Her eyes flickered towards the main screen. "I was wrong. Someone else from the program is out there." someone who doesn't believe in silence. Tartarus, that was my partner's call sign. Specter 2, we built the Aegis protocol together, which means he knew exactly how to build the virus to disable it. The revelation hung in the air, thick and cold. This wasn't a random attack by a foreign power. This was personal. This was a ghost from her past coming back to burn down the world she had tried to protect. Madsen finally understood. The attack, the virus, her presence here. It was all connected, a tangled web of a secret war he had never even known existed. The authority in his posture finally crumbled, replaced by the weary realization of a soldier who discovers the map he's been using is wrong. What do they want? He asked, his voice now that of a subordinate seeking guidance. They want the key, Anya said. Icebreaker isn't just a listening post. It's an amplification system. From here, a single command could destabilize global communications, ground every plane, shut down every satellite. It's the ultimate digital weapon. Specter 2 wants it back. He looked at her, a new respect dawning in his eyes, a respect forged in the fire of the last hour. What are your orders? Specter 1. The question was a surrender. It was an acknowledgement of her true rank, a rank that existed outside the traditional chain of command. Anya's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. The technician was gone. The commander was back. My orders, Colonel, she said, her voice regaining the steel it had held over the comms, are to hunt a ghost. And you and your men are going to help me. The command center was no longer Madsen's fortress. It was Anya Sharma's forward operating base in a war only she knew how to fight. The balance of power had not just shifted, it had been completely redrawn. The colonel, once her superior, was now part of her command. The silence that had followed Anya's revelation was profound. The Marines and technicians of Icebreaker, who had just been celebrating their survival, now looked at her with a mixture of awe, confusion, and a little bit of fear. The quiet comms tech they had barely noticed for 2 years was, in fact, a living legend from a program so secret its existence was a conspiracy theory. She was a ghost who had just saved them from an attack orchestrated by another ghost. Colonel Madsen, for his part, adapted with the speed of a career soldier facing a new reality. His pride had been shattered, but his sense of duty was intact. He turned to his stunned staff, his voice regaining its command, but with a new edge of deference. You heard her. This station is now operating under a new directive. Our mission is no longer observation. It's a manhunt. I want all systems dedicated to tracking any residual energy signature from the Tartarus virus. Find me a digital trail. He then turned to Anya. The command center is yours, Specter 1. What do you need? Anya was already at the main holographic display, her hands moving with a fluid grace as she pulled up encrypted satellite networks that weren't on any official military chart. I need a direct, shielded uplink to Fort Meade. Authorize it with your credentials, but route it through me. I'll handle the encryption. I need to talk to someone who still remembers the Specter program. Madsen nodded and relayed the order. For the next few hours, Anya orchestrated a digital counteroffensive from the heart of Icebreaker. She was no longer just a technician. She was a symphony conductor of data, pulling threads from the ether, weaving them together to form a picture of her old partner, Specter 2, whose real name was Julian Thorne. Using the station's immense processing power, she traced the faint remnants of the Tartarus virus back through a labyrinth of shell corporations and darknet servers. The trail was cold, expertly hidden, but she knew how Julian thought. He was arrogant. He would have left a signature, a small, boastful breadcrumb for her to find. And she did. A single encrypted audio file was embedded deep within the virus's source code. It was Julian's voice, distorted but unmistakable. I always told you, Anya. The silence was never going to last. You can't put weapons like us back in the box. I'm not destroying the world. I'm remaking it. Find me if you can. Beneath the audio was a set of coordinates, not for a location, but for a derelict Soviet-era satellite in a decaying orbit. It was a challenge. Madsen watched her work, a silent observer in his own command center. He saw the intensity in her eyes, the years of training and hard-won experience flowing through her fingertips. She was a weapon, just as Julian had said, a precision instrument of a war he was only now beginning to understand. He's using the satellite as a dead drop, Anya explained, pointing to the orbital path on the screen. He'll upload his next move to its servers, and by the time we get there, he'll be gone. But he made a mistake. He assumed I was still alone. She turned to Madsen. I need your long-range array. I want to hit that satellite with a targeted data burst. I can't destroy it, but I can piggyback a tracker onto his next upload. When he connects, we'll have his location. It was a risky move, one that could alert Julian that she was onto him. But it was their only shot. Do it, Madsen said without hesitation. As Anya prepared the data burst, Lieutenant Rourke approached her cautiously. Ma'am, he began the men. They don't know what to think. You saved our lives, but… Anya looked up, her expression softening for a moment. But I'm not what you thought I was, she finished for him. Tell them this, Lieutenant. I am on your side. And the man we're hunting is a threat to all of us. That's all they need to know for now. Rourke nodded, a look of profound respect on his face. He saluted, not the perfunctory gesture he would give a civilian, but a sharp, formal salute. Anya hesitated for a split second, then returned it with a small, clean nod. The data burst fired. For a moment, the command center held its breath. Then, a notification blinked on Anya's screen. Tracker deployed, awaiting uplink. Now, all they could do was wait. Anya stood, looking out at the endless expanse of white through the command center's viewport. She had left the shadows to protect this place, only to find the shadows had followed her here. Her quiet life was over. But as she felt the eyes of the soldiers and technicians on her, she realized something. She was no longer just a ghost. She was a commander again, and she was not alone. The wait was a special kind of hell, a silent, nerve-shredding torment that stretched hours into what felt like days. The command center of Icebreaker was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of the attack. Every soldier and technician was at their post, but their focus was singular, their attention fixed on the large central screen displaying the satellite's orbital path and the status of Anya's tracker, awaiting uplink. Anya herself sat at the main console, a still point in the turning world. She hadn't slept. She hadn't eaten. Her entire being was focused on the digital void, waiting for her old partner, Julian, to make his move. Colonel Madsen stood near her, nursing a cup of coffee, his presence a silent statement of support. The dynamic between them had irrevocably shifted. He was no longer the commander of the base. He was the commander of its physical assets. She was the commander of the war. He's methodical, she said, breaking the long silence. Her voice was low, almost a whisper to herself. He won't rush. He'll check for traps. He'll run counter-surveillance sweeps before he connects. So, this could take a while, Madsen stated. Anya nodded. He's testing me. He wants to see if I still remember the game. As if on cue, a flurry of alerts lit up a side panel. We've got incoming probes, the network security officer called out. High-level, encrypted. They're trying to scan our systems. It's him, Anya said, her fingers already moving. He's checking to see if we're listening. Lock down all external ports except for the tracker's encrypted channel. Route all his probes to a mirrored server. Let him see exactly what we want him to see. A station in disarray, systems barely online, still recovering. The technicians worked furiously to follow her commands, creating a digital illusion of weakness. It was a masterstroke of deception, a classic Specter program tactic. For hours, Julian's probes picked at their defenses, and for hours, Anya and her new team fed him a carefully crafted lie. Then, as the Arctic sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange, it happened. A new icon flashed on the screen. Uplink detected. He took the bait. Madsen breathed, stepping closer. He's connecting to the satellite. A stream of data began to flow. A split second later, Anya's tracker activated, piggybacking on his connection. A new window opened on the screen, displaying a map and a single, pulsing red dot. The location resolved. A decommissioned submarine pin carved into the side of a fjord in northern Norway. We've got him, Lieutenant Rourke whispered, a grin spreading across his face. But Anya didn't smile. She zoomed in on the location. It was remote, heavily fortified during the Cold War, and officially abandoned. The perfect place for a ghost to set up a new command center. He didn't just choose this place for its isolation, she said, her mind piecing it together. Those pins have direct, shielded access to undersea fiber optic cables. He's not just hiding. He's preparing to launch his main attack from there. She stood, her decision made. Colonel, I need a transport. A long-range stealth aircraft. I'm going in. Madsen stared at her. Alone. That's a suicide mission. I was trained for suicide missions, she replied flatly. Besides, I won't be alone. My uplink to Fort Meade finally went through. They're activating another asset. Someone else who remembers the game. She turned to him, her eyes holding a new fire. Your part of the war is over, Colonel. You defended this base. You held the line. Now it's my turn to hunt. Madsen looked at the faces of his men, then back at her. He saw the unshakable resolve in her gaze. He was a soldier, and he knew a true commander when he saw one. He gave a single, sharp nod. The Ghost Hawk is being prepped in Hangar Bay 2. It's an experimental long-range VTOL. Off the books. It's yours. As Anya walked toward the exit, the entire command center staff stood up. One by one, they saluted, not as a matter of protocol, but as a genuine sign of respect for the woman who had walked out of the shadows to save them. She paused at the door and looked back at Madsen. Thank you, Colonel. Godspeed, Specter 1, he replied, his voice filled with a reverence he had never shown anyone before. Anya stepped out into the biting Arctic wind, pulling her parka tight. Her quiet life was a distant memory. The ghost had been fully resurrected, and now she was heading back into the storm, not to defend, but to attack. The hunt was on. The decommissioned submarine pen in Norway was a scar carved into the stone of a desolate fjord, a relic of a war that was supposed to be over. It was a place of ghosts, which made it the perfect lair for Julian Thorne, Specter 2. Inside the cavernous, damp concrete structure, he sat before a bank of monitors, his face illuminated by the cold glow of cascading code. He was the master of a new kind of chaos, and his fingers were on the pulse of the world's digital heart. A soft chime from his console announced the arrival of the data from the satellite. He smiled faintly. Anya had taken the bait. She had found his message, and now she thought she had his location. He watched as her tracker program, a clever piece of work he had to admit, latched onto his data stream. He let it. He wanted her to come. He wanted the reunion to be on his terms, in his fortress. He stood and walked to a large, armored viewport overlooking the dark, churning waters of the fjord. She's coming, he said to the empty room, just as I knew she would. A continent away, the Ghost Hawk experimental aircraft cut through the upper atmosphere, its sleek black frame nearly invisible to radar. Inside the cockpit, Anya was not alone. In the co-pilot seat sat a man she hadn't seen in a decade. Marcus Vance, Specter 4. He was older, his face lined with the years he'd spent in the shadows, but his eyes were the same, sharp, analytical, and missing nothing. It's a trap, you know, he said, not taking his eyes off the navigation display. Of course it is, Anya replied, her hands steady on the controls. Julian was never subtle about his arrogance. He's broadcasting his location because he's confident we can't touch him there. So what's the play? Marcus asked. He expects a direct assault, a frontal attack on the pen. We're not going to give him that. She pulled up a schematic of the fjord. The pen was built during the Cold War. It has weaknesses. An old geothermal vent system, sealed off in the 80s, runs directly beneath the main command center. That's our way in. A two-person infiltration against a rogue Specter in his own fortress. Marcus mused with a wry smile. Feels like old times. This time, we finish it, Anya said, her tone leaving no room for doubt. As they approached the Norwegian coast, they dropped altitude, skimming above the waves, using the terrain to mask their approach. They landed the Ghost Hawk in a hidden cove miles from the pen and proceeded on foot through the snow-covered, rugged landscape. The cold was brutal, but for Anya and Marcus, it was just another part of the mission. They found the sealed entrance to the geothermal vent, a rusted, circular hatch covered in ice. Working together in silence, they cut it open and descended into the darkness. The tunnels were narrow and slick with moisture, a labyrinth of pipes and decaying machinery. But Anya's memory of the schematics was perfect. She led them through the maze until they were directly beneath the low hum of the command center's power core. Above them, Julian was making his final preparations. He was initiating the final sequence of the Tartarus Protocol. In 10 minutes, he would unleash a cascading communications failure across all NATO command structures, effectively blinding the Western world. He believed Anya was still hours away, preparing a clumsy assault on his front door. "We go now," Anya whispered to Marcus. They planted a small, localized EMP charge on the ceiling of the tunnel, directly beneath the server room. It wouldn't destroy the system, but it would cause a momentary power fluctuation, a digital seizure just long enough to bypass his security. They ascended through a maintenance ladder, emerging into the submarine pen's lower levels. The place was eerily quiet, run by automated systems. There were no guards. Julian's confidence was his only security. They reached the command center door. Marcus disabled the electronic lock, while Anya prepared for what came next. The door hissed open. Julian was standing with his back to them, his eyes fixed on the main screen where a countdown timer showed T-2:00. "You're late, Anya," he said without turning around. "I expected you 5 minutes ago." He turned, a small, sad smile on his face. "But you always did like to make an entrance." "It's over, Julian," Anya said, her weapon raised. "Shut it down." "It's never over," he countered, gesturing to the screen. "This is evolution. You and we were built to guide it, not to hide from it in the snow." He took a step forward. "Join me. We can still control this. Together." "There's no control," she said. "Only chaos." Behind Julian, Marcus was already at a secondary terminal, typing furiously, uploading a countervirus Anya had designed. The countdown hit 1 minute. Julian laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the vast room. "You can't stop it. The code is already propagating." "I'm not trying to stop it," Anya said. "I'm redirecting it." On the screen, the target destinations, NATO command centers, flickered and changed. The new target was a single, isolated server, the one Julian was using right here. He was targeting himself. His eyes widened in disbelief as he realized what she had done. He had built a weapon, and she had aimed it back at its creator. The countdown hit 0. The systems in the command center surged, the screens flashing with red alerts. A wave of data crashed down, not on the world, but on this single room, frying every circuit, every server, every line of code. Julian Thorne, the man who wanted to control the world's information, was now completely cut off, trapped in a digital tomb of his own making. The room went dark, the only light coming from the emergency strobes. Julian stood in the flickering red light, defeated. Anya lowered her weapon. Her war with the past was finally over. Months later, Anya stood on a quiet balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. She wasn't wearing a parka or a flight suit, but simple civilian clothes. The world didn't know what had happened in that Norwegian fjord. The official story was a massive solar flare had caused temporary communication disruptions. The Specter program remained a ghost. She had been offered a new command, a new title, a new role in the shadows. She had respectfully declined. Marcus Vance walked up beside her, handing her a glass of water. "They're still trying to get you back, he said. "The world needs people like you." Anya looked out at the calm water. "The world has people like me," she said. "They just don't know it yet." She thought of Colonel Madsen and his men at Icebreaker, standing their ground. She thought of Lieutenant Rourke, who had trusted her when he shouldn't have. They were the ones who held the line. Her job, she had decided, was not to be a weapon anymore. It was to be a guardian, a silent watcher, ensuring the shadows never grew so long again. Her name was Anya Sharma, and she was no longer a Specter. She was free.